That sounds like Habanagila.
I hadn't seen this.
That ankle is all right, though. That ankle is doing just fine.
Professionally produced video as well. Look at that.
Man, that dude spent some bread on that one.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's marrying
on the
Chanel
wedding?
Iman, so
Sterling?
he's marrying Chanel Iman, so that was a big deal.
Oh, okay. Look at you.
Sterling Shepard.
I mean, well, I didn't know better housekeeping over here.
That's not better housekeeping. Page 6. Come on.
Page 6.
That's local. You know that. That's your team.
You know that, exactly. Come on.
I know. I was trying to think of it. It was bad.
That's Red Book for you. There's Family Circle.
All right, I got to hold that L. I got to hold that L.
Oh, that was weird.
That was well done.
It was. All right. One would think the Cowboys would have taken one look at the Eagles' success and immediately jumped starters their off-season moves, but Dallas has acquired just one new player through free agency, Joe Thomas, and unfortunately he's the guy who had 5 tackles for the Packers last year, not the all-time great left tackle. Meanwhile, the Eagles are still adding stars on defense, and the Giants added a star left tackle to go along with the #2 pick. So, Chris, have the Cowboys done enough to stay close in the NFC East?
Well, I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are doing what they can. They franchised DeMarcus Lawrence to keep him from walking away in free agency.
Yep.
And they were up against the cap, so they didn't have a whole heck of a lot of options in terms of supplementing the roster. There's some interest in Allen Hurns. They met with him yesterday after he was cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. And not to mention, they still got to address that Zach Martin contract this offseason. They're going to have to make him a top-of-the-market offensive guard. I mean, you saw what Andrew Norwell got from the Jacksonville Jaguars in free agency. Zach Martin's going to be the highest-paid guard in football shortly. So
yes,
there's some financial things that the Dallas Cowboys had to take care of this offseason that have hindered them from being aggressive at the top of the market in free agency. But I think they're doing what they can right now.
It's the gift and the curse of drafting so well. And the Cowboys have drafted very well, particularly on the offensive line, which is now, aside from Zach Martin, those offensive linemen are on their second contract, and because they're all pro or Pro Bowl level players, they're making a ton of money. But this is also why this season, the 2018 season, is so incredibly critical for this team. Because the guy over your shoulders, Dak Prescott, is still basically playing for free. You got a franchise quarterback on a 4th-round deal, so he's making less than $1 million a year. You got to take advantage of that. Yep. And they don't have added cap flexibility because of his contract, because of the money they're paying other people. So there was not much they could do this offseason. But you mentioned Giants adding a left tackle. Washington thinks they got better at quarterback. Like, I don't know if they did or they didn't, but they believe.
That's what they're saying publicly.
Right, Alex Smith is a better option.
They didn't.
Okay, well, fair enough. But they think they did. And
I mean, what's he going to throw for 5,000 yards?
No, okay. That's not going to happen.
Right. Who are you going to be throwing to?
Great question.
So even if Washington didn't, though, I think we have good reason to believe the Giants are not going to be a 2-win team. And that Philadelphia just won the Super Bowl. They've got their quarterback coming back, and they keep adding pieces. Like, Dallas's best path to getting competitive again, or they were competitive last year, but to competing for the division again, is their own guys getting better. But I understand why Cowboys fans would be a little frustrated if they're not looking at the cap and like, why are we not players in free agency when we needed offensive weapons? We needed a tight end. We needed a dynamic wide receiver.
They're going to get them through the draft. That's all you can. When you're up against the cap, and I think fans are knowledgeable enough to know what's available, what you can do, what you can't do. Dallas has a lot of stars. They're on their offensive line, and they're paying them a lot of money. It's not like they're a team absent of high salaries. No, they are. You mentioned their defensive end. He's going to get paid. He's either going to get paid a one-year deal with the franchise, or they would love to sign him to a long-term contract. So he's going to get compensated. They got to address their needs through the draft. They got to get a wide receiver through the draft. They got to get another DB through the draft. So they're doing what they've done to be successful. They need Dak to have a great year. They need Zeke to have a great year. And the Dallas Cowboys are right where you expect them to be. They're going to win double-digit games. They're better than Washington. They're better than the Giants. So to say that they're not in fighting for the NFC East, then you're not watching it. The only team that's better than them on paper are the Philadelphia Eagles, who are the Super Bowl champions. So Dallas is in position that they can only improve through the draft because of the money they've already spent.
So what are we worried about, Chris Canty?
Well, yeah, I think fans forget that you missed Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games this season. So in the middle of the season, as you're starting to hit their stride, you're taking out a big part of your offense. So if you get back to that team from 2 years ago where Zeke had 1,000 yards gained from scrimmage on first down, running the ball, I think that's a different formula. That's a formula for success for this team. That takes pressure off of Dak Prescott. And that's a game that they can play with the Philadelphia Eagles, and they can potentially win if it's that style of play. So I think that's where you have to focus on, getting Ezekiel Elliott back. That's going to make a huge difference for this team. But they can't do a whole lot in terms of being able to address things in free agency. They just don't have the money to do it.
But, Jenna, you said it, though. But the other thing that happened last year was not just Zeke missing 6 games and the cloud hanging over their head all year about is he going to be out, is he going to be in. Dak regressed. And one of the big reasons they won 13 games, we now believe Zeke was the biggest reason, but the secondary reason was Dak was extraordinary, particularly when it comes to not doing what we just showed him doing, throwing interceptions. Like, what Dak Prescott, are we going to get the Dak Prescott from year 1?
Right.
Dak Prescott from year 2? Or somewhere in the middle?
Right. I think sometimes when you're evaluating quarterbacks, it's really not fair because people say, well, he started 2 years. That should be enough sample size. Well, he played great his rookie year in a certain system. They didn't risk too much. So in his second year, they put a lot more at risk. The team didn't play as well. So you can't say he regressed because we had never seen him. We had never really seen him play bad before. Typically in a rookie year, we see a guy play bad. Then we see some sporadic where they play well. Carson Wentz. His rookie year. Now, if he had played that in year number 2, you could say, oh, he went backwards. But we had never seen Dak. We had only seen him be successful. So we can't say he went backwards. The water level settled to which Dak is it? Is it the Dak of the first year or is it the Dak of the second year? What's his real potential?
And the point that I'm trying to make is if the answer is what it likely is, somewhere in between, if he's not as good as he was in year 1, but not as mediocre, I don't think he was bad in year 2, but I think mediocre is fair, not as mediocre as he was in year 2, then I think the Cowboys are going to struggle to get to 10 wins. Then I don't think they're quite necessarily as good as maybe my counterpart does, just because they don't have dynamic weapons on the outside. And aside from DeMarcus Lawrence, you can't rely on Sean Lee to be healthy. I don't look at their secondary as a couple shutdown corners. I don't see, I know what they do well. The offensive line and running the football.
How many games did they win last year?
Last year they won 9
games.
How many games Zeke missed?
6. They won 13 the year before. I'm with you, CC. I think style of play is going to be huge for Dak Prescott. He's not evolved to the point where he can be a volume passer. So getting Zeke back, that's going to take a lot of the load off of Dak. And I think you'll see a different style of play.
And that defense plays a lot better when they run.
He won't make as many mistakes when you got number 21 in the backfield.
And the other thing that's going to help Dak a lot is the fact that the Cowboys are not picked to be the best team in the NFC East. There's not this pressure on him to just lead this team to be the Eagles.
It's always pressure in Dallas, Jenna.
Not like there is when they are the team to beat in the division and you're putting that on a young quarterback.
Okay, agreed. But there's got to be some sense of urgency in Dallas because, like you said, Nick, you got to take advantage of having the best offensive line in football and a quarterback on a rookie deal. That is the most valuable commodity in the NFL.
Chris, thank you
Great
so
job,
much.
Guys, appreciate it.
Go put that ring on and absorb the bling.
Absorb the bling?
Absorb the bling?
Right in my, it's just enough,
Okay.
Nick. This didn't come out right.
It didn't come out.
Chris, we loved having you here. Thank you very much.
All right.
James Harden actually better than LeBron James. What is it, CC? That's
Did you
next
write
on
that
First
down?
Things First.
No, she freestyled that.
Oh, that was freestyle.
She freestyled it. You
That's
can
some of your
tell.
best stuff. Normally when you freestyle, Jenna.